What's up, everyone? All right, so we've got everything plumbed up on the motor that we needed to get squared away before we got it installed back in the car. Went ahead and hooked up all the turbo lines. This is the coolant return line, or the feed line rather. I did do a little exploring as far as coolant line routing goes on a turbo. You really want the orientation of the turbo to determine where your coolant lines run. You want the return line to be higher than the feed line. Now, unfortunately, the way the lines are set up on this turbo, you can't really do that feasibly. Basically, the top on each side, this is the return line here. This is the feed line back here. This goes into the block right here. The feed line comes from the water outlet housing, and it is actually higher than the return line. The reason that they don't want that is because it has something to do with as the system is cooling down, it apparently promotes flow to have it the other way. You can't really tell from here, but this line down here is actually lower than this line here. So the return line is lower than the feed line. And the problem with that is that air could get trapped in the system because obviously bubbles rise. The flow is going to go in the direction of the angle or the orientation of the turbo too. I'm gonna get over here on the side and see if maybe you can see it better. Yeah, you can kind of tell. Anyway, there was no other way to plumb the system. We've got our heat blanket on here, our turbo diaper, to try and hold some of the heat in and away from some of these lines that are running. This right here is the oil feed line. It comes around here, it goes into the block right there, and then of course underneath we've got our return line under there. The motor's ready to go in the car. I've got the ethanol gauge connector here, and it comes down here. I've got it tapped, or rather taped, into the existing harness all the way along here. And then you can see it splits off from the tape right there. I couldn't really feasibly wrap tape in it under here without pulling a bunch of harness back out, which is fine. I just cut myself a little slit. You can see where I abused the grommet that plugs up the firewall to try and force that line through there. And let me grab a flashlight real quick. We're gonna go around here. Now, I've already had the glove box removed. This is where the glove box goes, and right there, that little sign, that's where it comes out through the firewall. They were kind enough to leave the carpet split enough to where, you know, you could just peel it back. My hand is getting all up in the way. Anyway, here's where my line comes through there at. I'm gonna set this light down, and I'm gonna try and use a steady one here. There we go. So let's see if I can reach my hand up in here. I'm gonna get in the way no matter what, because I'm a stink finger. I got that pulled back. There it is. You can see it right there. That would be the grommet. No. Come on, focus back in on this. There we go. You can kind of see it. That's good enough. You get the point. And that wire that I've got just kind of hanging out here is actually going to go up this way And I'm gonna go ahead and just mount my gauge on top of the gauge pod. This is the factory gauge pod. It sits right here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna screw the gauge pod down onto the top of this. This is just a board under here. That's where that plug goes to, is that board right there. And I'm just gonna mount my ethanol gauge on there. I'm gonna run those wires up through here. I don't anticipate it being too hard, but if it is, I'll try and make some video about it. Should just be able to reach up in there with those wires and get them coming out. Anyway, the motor's ready to go back in the car. I'm just gonna get some help getting it set up. And then we're gonna set it down. And we'll be ready to mock up our fuel lines for the aux fuel system. And once we get everything on the back done, then we'll be ready to start putting the coolant lines back on and everything on the front of the car, the radiator core support, the bumper reinforcement, and of course, eventually, finally, the bumper. So I will get back to you guys in a little bit.